negative externalities here. So we're talking negative externalities. This means we have spillover costs, or SC, spillover costs, meaning that a third party that's not a part of the primary transaction, not the buyer, not the seller, is actually negatively impacted by this or carries a cost. Pollution is often an example of this, right? Where the rest of society carries the cost of increased pollution. So that's a negative externality. Let's go ahead and draw it up and see what this looks like. There's going to be a price and quantity here. Now, my demand, or my MSB, is going to be the same, right? Marginal social benefits is going to be equal to my demand, because my marginal social benefits are not really impacted here. We can assume that they're equal to my marginal private benefits. It's all equal, right? Because we're not talking about spillover benefits. We're talking about spillover costs right now, or that MSC is greater than MPC, or the social costs are greater than the private costs. Okay, so this is going to be just one curve here. Next up, we have our supply curve. That's a bad supply curve, but you get the idea. My supply curve is actually going to be equal to MPC. We're assuming that the individual making the decision is only looking out for their own costs. They don't take into account the cost of society. It's just our private costs that are making that. We're going to have our equilibrium quantity right here. We'll call this Q. You can see this as Q1, but you'll more oftentimes see it as QFM. And we dash over for our price, and this will be price FM. There we go. Okay, now, what about social costs? Well, if we have spillover costs here, like we set up here, then our social costs are greater than our private costs. So in order to demonstrate that, we simply draw a supply curve that's greater than our normal supply curve, our original supply curve, and we label it MSC. Or in other words, our social costs are greater than our private costs. Right here, this is going to give us, where MSB equals MSC, this is going to give us our socially optimal quantity. Right? This is where we want to be, and this is going to give us our socially optimal price. So that's where we want to be. So if this is the case and we have over allocated, we've produced too much, we need to reduce production. The question is, how does one reduce production on a good? How do we get people to take into account social costs? And the answer is taxing. By creating a per unit tax, often called a sin tax here, we can force businesses to account for the fact that there's an increased cost for society as a whole. So a tax will shift this curve to the left, making it that MSC equals MPC, right? That we are where we want to be, and that we produce our socially optimal quantity, and we are no longer producing at our private costs alone. So that is a negative externality. We can also indicate deadweight loss if we dash up here until we hit our MSC right there, right? This is where we want to be. This is where we're at. The difference between where we want to be and where we are at, that triangle right there, is considered dead weight loss. Keep that in mind. Make sure you're able to identify that. As long as you know that there's spillover costs, that MSC is going to be greater than MPC here, and that a taxation is going to push this curve to the left to get us to the socially optimal quantity. And that as long as this correction doesn't take place, we have dead weight loss between where we want to be, socially optimal, and where we are, free market. That difference is going to be our dead weight loss. Okay, I hope that made some sense for you. As long as you know those things, you should be in pretty good shape.